showed you how to like access the sources and how to use them. This video is going to tell you what I mean and how to fill out the packet. All right, so the main event research packet. All right, so the first question that you're going to answer is, let me highlight it for you. Okay, so what happened? What was the main event? So it's asking two specific questions. Okay, I think I should probably swap them. The main event. So that's asking, what was the main event of your topic? What was the story of your topic, right? Like, so we all have topics, right? But your thesis, remember, specifically talks about like an event that happened that had lasting consequences when it comes to communication. Okay, so for Rosa Parks, for instance, right? The example there would be she was on the bus, right? She refused to give up her seat. She was then arrested. She had to go to jail for 14 days. And as a result, the civil rights movement leaders decided to have a huge boycott on Montgomery buses until they desegregated, right? So that's the main event. That's what happened, right? And then what you would do is you would find some sources, right? And again, it's not wrong to use secondary, but it's good if you could find like an article or find a picture of something in that event to put right here, and then just describe it, right? So here you're trying to tell me the story of what happened, okay? Like what were the facts of the situation, all right? So that's research question number 1. Okay, so 1 second, sorry. Let me highlight this. Okay, so research question number 2. Where were the places it took place? So, as we know with like Rosa Parks, it took place in Montgomery, Alabama. Okay? More specifically, it also took place on a city bus. Okay? And I'm not sure of the neighborhood. That's something you could find out, for instance. And that's where it took place, right? And then you could also talk about the fact that it also took place, throughout the whole city and state, because the whole city was affected by the boycott, right? And you could also talk about just where this happened, right? Like, so where is Montgomery, Alabama? What's different? What was the difference between living in Montgomery, Alabama, compared to living in Minneapolis at the time, or New York, or Los Angeles? Okay, so that's what it means by the where was / where the place / places it took place. So, why did it happen? What caused it? So, what it's asking here is, why did your event happen? Why did your topic happen? What was the cause of it, right? So, if you use Rosa Parks, why did it happen? So, what happened? So you could give some. So it'd be good to have a little bit of context, right? So, why did it happen? Because she had the audacity, and I use that in quotes, to sit in a seat, right? And why was that the case? Well, there was laws called Jim Crow law that basically made it legal to segregate. Okay, so that's why it happened. Because if there was no such law, then why would she get in trouble, right? So you need to explain the reasons behind why your event occurred. Okay, and then what caused it? Again, a few things. What caused it? Well, specifically, it was her not moving out. It was for her knowingly sitting in that seat, knowing that she was going to get in trouble. Okay, so it was really part of her civil rights training. Okay, she was trying to peacefully disrupt the normal life there. Okay, so the why is just asking, what were the reasons it happened? What led to it? What happened that shook everything up? Okay, so that's what's asking. Why did it happen? What caused it? Okay. Research question number 4. Let me get the highlighty thingy. Who was involved? Okay, so this is asking specifically, who were the people involved in this situation, and why? What was their role? Okay, so Rosa Parks, she clearly was she was the main person, right? And her role, her role was to disrupt the way of life of the segregated city of Montgomery, right? And so she was part of it. Okay, you can talk about the city officials and the police officers. They were a part of it too, right? They were involved. They are the ones who made and enforced this law. Okay, so they're deeply involved. Talk about the residents of Montgomery, because almost all the black residents suddenly stopped going on stopped riding the bus, right? And that would affect the money the city gets. So that means their budget's going to be in trouble, right? So it affected all the citizens, right? Because if all the black people stop going on the bus, right, that's probably 70-80% of the money gone. Okay, so that's who, right? And then who else? Well, it wasn't. Well, who was behind it, right? It was Martin Luther King and other people, right? So civil rights movements and leaders were also involved. Okay, so when you get to your topic, talk about all the main people involved with the event. Okay, talk about people directly involved and people indirectly involved. Okay, so that's what I'm looking for there. And then this is kind of in line with what I was talking about. Like, so it's asked with the last question. So, question 5 is, who was affected? Who were the people that were most affected by this? Okay, well, like when you talk about your topic, like, who was affected by the main event, right? Like, who are the not necessarily victims, but who were the recipients of the consequences, right? So in this instance, the victims who was affected was both, the citizens of the city, the law enforcement and city officials, and I think also people just around the country were starting to see that there was cracks in the foundation, right? They were starting to see, oh, the civil rights movement might actually hold some water. It might actually be okay, right? So that's what I mean by who, okay? So I mean, like, if you were talking about 9/11, who was affected? Well, clearly the people of New York City, but also the people nationwide, right? So here you can find some sources where that they can specifically talk about the different reactions and how people felt as this event happened, okay? So that's what I mean by who. Like, who are the people who felt the effects of the event? And then what was the communication? So what did this communicate to other people, like, outside of this event, right? And in the event. Well, think about Rosa Parks, right? It communicated that the civil rights movement was really starting to get more stronger because they were willing to go to jail for technically doing nothing wrong, right? So it was communicating that the civil rights movement was not scared anymore. It communicated that the segregationists and white supremacists down there were highly against the civil rights movement because at first, right? Because they're like, we do not accept this, right? But it also communicated, their actions also communicated that when there's pressure, they'll cave, okay? And then finally, you can talk about just the reaction, right? So it'd be good to find some articles or reactions to this that talk about how people were just stunned that this was occurring in America at the time, okay? So it communicated to them that the South was not a pleasant place to live, okay? So what I mean by communicate, what was the communication? What was the story that people got out of it? What did people think after they heard it, right? Like, how did they interpret what happened? What was like the story told to them, right? So it's a little different than just telling the main event, right? This is like their specific reaction. Okay. So this last question, question 7. Let me do this quick. So the question is, when did it happen and how long of a time period was it? So this is asking pretty specifically, like, when did this event happen? Okay. And so that was, December of 1955, right? So that's the when. And how long of a time period was it? That's asking, when did it start and when did it stop, this event, right? we're not saying that we'll get into the after packet later where we talk about like the effects over time, okay? But this is asking when did it start and when did it stop, and also along with that, it's also asking what started it and then what ended it, okay? Because like here, right, there was a definitive start. It was Rosa Parks disobeyed segregation laws on the bus, okay, and it ended with the Montgomery boycott, bus boycott ending, right? Because they finally, the city finally agreed to loosen their segregation laws when it came to transportation. All right, so it is a definitive start and a definitive end. All right, so just make sure you tell me when it started and when it stopped. Okay, so that's what I'm asking there. And then there's some other question. So if you think of another research question, you can. I'd happily applaud you. I'd implore you to write it down here, and then you can answer the question. But this is not required, right? So this is not required. This is not required. Okay. But if you want to, you can, and you can write notes, put your sources there. So I hope this kind of gave you a explanation of the packet. I will continue, like, if you turn it in, I'll give you some feedback, and I'll see if you're going the right direction. If you're not, I'll give you some pointers. If you're lacking sources, I'll come up with some to help you out and lead you to others, okay? But yeah, I just wanted to explain the packet in detail, all right? So if you have any questions, please email me and let me know.